Hello, our names are Amber, Nick, Isabel, and Bianca. Together, we will be breaking down the important concept of moral development, focusing on the lifespan stages of infancy to childhood. The first question we need to ask is, what is the technical term for morals? Morals, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, are defined as the standards for good and bad behaviour. Morals are something that are discussed during the early stages of life, perhaps even without realization. When we hear the word morals, many words may pop into our heads. For example, ethical or unethical, principled or unprincipled, moral or immoral, selfless or selfish. Do you notice anything from these word pairings? Well, when referring to morals, there is always a comparison being made, therefore an opposite always has to exist. For example, good is the opposite of bad. When growing up, society and other external influences teach us examples of morals that we should abide by. These examples include basic morals, but can also include more complex moral codes, which place strain on our moral compass. Basic morals can include things such as do not lie, do not steal, treat others with respect, keep your promises, and manners come for free. A few examples of more complex morals often involve political and lawful situations, such as opinions on same-sex marriage, asylum seekers and refugees, the death penalty, and more. These complex morals often come into play later in life. Now that we have a basic understanding of morals, we must ask ourselves, what is moral development? According to Sandrock 2021, moral development is defined as thoughts, feelings, and behaviors regarding rules and conventions about what people should do in their interactions with other people. Why is moral development important? Moral development is important because individuals need to be able to expand their moral compass to learn to deal appropriately when interacting with individuals and society as a whole. It is essential to be able to learn valuable lessons from the experiences we undergo within our daily lives. In this presentation, we will each be discussing a key aspect of moral development. The following aspects include moral feelings, moral reasoning, moral behavior, and moral conscience. By the end of this presentation, we hope you have a sound understanding of what moral development consists of and why it is so important for human development. When breaking down moral development into its core concepts, moral feelings is the first key aspect that determines an individual's moral interactions with others. First, we must ask ourselves, what are moral feelings and what do they involve? What does it mean when we talk about our feelings? Moral feelings, as defined by the Cambridge Dictionary, involves one's emotions that are influenced by external sources, such as the actions of those around us. For example, as children, when someone does something we don't like, such as take away a toy, we often get angry and have an aggressive response, such as yelling or stomping our feet. Moral feelings include both positive emotions such as admiration, empathy, sympathy, and self-esteem, as well as negative emotions such as guilt, anger, shame, and outrage. So now we have a more basic understanding of moral feelings. But how does this relate to the moral actions and development of children? When either positive or negative emotions are experienced to a strong degree, particularly in a combination of one or more emotions such as guilt and empathy, they influence children to act in accordance with standards of right or wrong. It is known that certain positive emotions are linked to morals, for example, empathy. Empathy is defined by the Cambridge Dictionary as the ability to share someone else's feelings or experiences by picturing yourself in that person's situation. This emotion or moral feeling influences how individuals respond to others. For example, in a recent study, participants' guilt proneness combined with their empathy predicted an increase in pro-social behavior. Pro-social behavior relates to voluntarily carrying out acts that benefit another individual. There is evidence to strongly suggest that when children experience strong positive emotions, such as empathy, they are more likely to carry out pro-social behavior. In comparison, experiencing negative emotions is more likely to lead to a decrease in pro-social behavior. Strong moral feelings such as empathy are therefore believed to play an essential role in the development of children's morals as they grow into adolescence and adulthood. Essentially, this discussion relates to emotional development and moral judgment. Children who are less able to regulate their emotions and associated actions, such as anger and aggression, are therefore more likely to have difficulty understanding and applying moral principles within society. Simply put, moral feelings are what ultimately influences moral behavior, determining how a child's moral compass leads them to behave in particular situations.
The second key aspect of moral development is moral behavior. Cambridge Dictionary defines behavior as the way that someone or something behaves in a particular situation. And as stated earlier, we know that morals refer to the standards for good and bad behavior, thus meaning that moral behavior is how an individual acts concerning what is right. For example, a child will refrain from cheating in a game if they believe that it is the right thing to do. According to McNabb, Kohlberg discussed the link between moral behavior and authority. Through the Milgram experiment, Kohlberg theorizes that when in the presence of an authority figure, individuals are more likely to abandon moral behavior and follow the person they view as in charge. This is strengthened by Sandrock's theory that when children see behavior being modelled, they are likely to replicate it. This can be seen in both positive and negative modelling. For instance, if a child sees their parents sharing items with each other, they are likely to repeat this behavior. Juxtaposing this, if a child sees their parents being selfish, they are also likely to replicate this behavior. Sandrock also suggests that moral behavior can be influenced by punishment and reward. For example, if a child behaves without morals and is punished by an authoritative figure, they are less likely to continue this behavior. In comparison, if a child behaves using morals and is rewarded, they are likely to continue or repeat this behavior. For instance, if a child is rewarded for sharing their toys with others, they are more inclined to repeat this action. In summary, moral behavior is how an individual behaves respecting the right thing to do. It can also be influenced in several different ways.
When discussing moral development, it is pivotal to discuss moral reasoning. Cambridge 2020 states that reasoning is the process of thinking about something in order to make a decision. In layman's terms, moral reasoning is thinking in a moral way when making decisions. The differentiation between right and wrong in decision-making for children is influenced by a number of factors. For children, this may start on a very basic level, where small transgressions, such as throwing things on the floor and disobeying their parents, may evolve into understanding the rights and wrongs of a social environment, such as schools, and the development of their social relationships of their own. Studies of children, including Piaget's theory, analyze how children aged 4 to 7 display heteronymous morality, the ability of a child to judge behavior by the outcome or consequence given by an outside source, which, in comparison to children aged 10 or older, saw a development of an autonomous reality, where children develop their own morality dependent on their intentions, rather than the consequences that follow their actions. Jambon and Smetana 2020 analyzes the importance of parental influence in discussions on the parenting styles and supportive environments, which, in turn, lead to a better understanding of moral norms. According to Jambon and Smetana, warmer relationships with parents or carers serve as an important role in stronger moral identities and also develop a child's conscience throughout their childhood. Family narratives are also pivotal to moral development and reasoning, with strong family discussions surrounding social and moral expectations in children as young as 2, has seen a greater understanding of children themselves and others. This once again expresses the importance of family relations in early childhood development. There are many influences to a child's understanding of morals and social expectations, which, in turn, develop a child's moral reasoning.
So far, we have covered moral reasoning, feeling, and behaviour. These three elements of moral development together make up the next key aspect, which is conscience. Conscience can be defined as an internal regulation of standards of right or wrong, and relates to the internal moral compass within an individual. So, how is conscience formed? Conscience, in relation to moral development in children, is evidently present through the conveyance of empathy, guilt, and discomfort following transgression or conflict. Research has shown that children as early as 2 years old can be motivated by feelings of guilt to display a mandatory behaviour. For example, if one child takes away a second child's toy, to which the second child displays distress by crying or screaming, the first child may give back the toy to amend the situation. The development of conscience in children is also greatly researched alongside children's relationships with their parents or caregivers, and how, or if children adopt similar values and belief systems to that of their parents or caregivers. For example, children with secure attachment styles are likely inclined to adopt similar values and belief systems to that of their parents. In 1923, Sigmund Freud suggested that there are 3 key stages involved in the development of moral conscience in infancy and childhood, these being the ID, the ego, and the superego. This theory suggests that the ID is present at birth, in which infants are motivated by unconscious, primitive drives to meet their instinctive needs, and thus far a moral conscience is absent. Freud suggests that the role of the ego is to meet and regulate the needs of both the ID and the superego, and develops in early childhood. According to Freud, the superego develops at ages 3 to 5 and is representative of a conscience, in that it helps to regulate which wants and needs of the ID can or should be met on the basis of morality. From this, we can conclude that a conscience is an internal regulation which helps us to decide right from wrong.